my work as a physician is in a federally qualified health center, and we've been certainly really impacted. We closed for a little while, and as a doctor, I did almost entirely house calls for those first few months of the pandemic and work in the hospital. And so we've had to pay a special attention to burnout in the last 6 months, because really the first 6 months, brutal as it was, really fired people towards their calling. And Richard, I think you'd probably agree that one of the things that engages people is the intrinsic motivation of aiming towards your mission. If you aligned yourself even reasonably well when you took a position with the mission of your organization, if you said, yeah, these, not just this paycheck, but this work is for me, then when you are under stress to excel at that work, and everybody is talking about, and in New York City, banging pots and pans to thank you for doing that work, your engagement may not be the problem. Engagement comes with more time. And the thing that I'm seeing the most that I'd like to speak about, Lou, is actually with the companies that I work with as a resilience expert. The work that what I'm seeing happen there is that people would like to stay engaged. This is my job and I would like to feel good about doing it. But burnout itself has 3 criteria, according to the World Health Organization in their occupational medicine field. They say it is fatigue from the work, feeling exhausted by the work. It is a disengagement, which is, I think, Richard, what you're getting at, that if you're catching the football because you're being paid to do that, but when you're on the bench, you're not in it in your head, you're not using that discretionary energy, and that your efficacy drops. How good you are at the work is not how it was. You actually have a drop from your own personal baseline. And that's why, to be blunt, we have to care about what happens on the bench. We have to care about that discretionary energy, because you could see an employer that might say, I'm burned out. I'm talking about burnout, do your job or don't. But the truth is that even when people are showing up to do their job, if they're not feeling it and putting in that discretionary energy, even the work they're paid to do, that they have to do, the boxes they will check, they won't do it as well.
Richard, let me throw something over to you, because I know that's one of your themes. I've learned from Richard the idea, don't bounce back, bounce forward. Well, what have we learned in bouncing forward, Richard?
Well, Lou, my colleague Michael Couch and I have been running these leadership cafe podcasts for the past year, interviewed over 50 leaders, and we identified from what these leaders had to say 3 key themes that we learned in response to the question, not what has the pandemic done to you, but what has it done for you? The first is culture, that organizations that have a healthy culture, that promote doing right for their employees and customers do a good job. The example is Faber-Castell, the arts company. They received so many letters of appreciation from parents saying, thank you for your art supplies. It has saved us and our kids. The second area has to do with companies having a great leadership pipeline and encouraging these young leaders to step up and giving them the opportunity in the face of COVID to provide leadership for their team members. And the third area that was an important discovery was, of course, around resilience. And not just about, again, as you alluded to, Lou, not just bouncing back. That's not sufficient. That's not, in my mind, resilience. Resilience is really, what have we learned from that experience and how are we applying it in new and novel situations? And that really, I think, is probably the entrepreneur's lessons, is that you're always trying something new. And that's a lesson that I think can be applied in any organization, is we want to bounce forward.
Excellent. Debra, what have you seen in your corporate customers?
I think in 3s also, so I'll give it to you that same way. The first is, this was a real opportunity for companies to prove their mission, to say, we don't just say that we see our customers as family. We don't just say that we care about the lives of our employees. We now had an opportunity to show what we've been telling for years and years at board meetings and other stakeholder situations. And many companies did. Many companies really stepped up and lived their mission. The second thing that I think is really valuable is that, and I love your phrase, Richard, I will credit you when I use it, thinking inside the box. Many excellent problem solvers were uncovered in this. People who wouldn't necessarily have had the opportunity to show the autonomy and the self-efficacy to figure out how to solve something, be it where to work or how to interact with customers while still keeping them safe, whatever it was. We saw a lot of internal innovation during this time. And companies that are smart enough to not throw that baby out with this really awful COVID infested bathwater are really seeing some good come out of that. And I would say that the third real silver lining is that we have stopped thinking about mental health as a service we need to provide for any employee who is, God forbid, suicidal. Mm-hmm. Because so many business leaders that I spoke to up through 2019, when I asked about their mental health initiatives, they would say, our employee benefits has a mental health hotline for anyone who's suicidal, box checked. And now a much more nuanced and three-dimensional understanding, not just of mental illness or severe acute mental distress, but of actual mental health has come out of this conversation with initiatives to follow through.
Mental health is completely different than mental illness, and people do not make that distinction. Right. You're watching Debra present is a demonstration of mental health. Going to an arts performance, watching my wife's a dancer, watching my wife dance this weekend, that was mental health. Those are mental health activities.